Hello artists! It's time for step 2 of our weaving project, making pockets out of yarn. Last week you worked to create a loom out of cardboard and you put your warp strings up and down. One side has loops, one side has hooks. Now we're going to start adding our weft strings, or strings that go right to left or left to right. With any color you'd like to start with, pull about an arm's length amount of yarn off of your spool, trim it, and then you'll need your needle. Your needle has two parts, the sharp part and the eye of the needle. Take your yarn, thread it through the needle. I like to twist mine. Sometimes folding it and twisting it helps. Or if those little fibers are being really difficult, trim them with your scissors. Don't put this yarn in your mouth and thread your needle though. That's yucky. Pull that thread about 6 inches away from the eye of the needle. Now, whenever you're weaving, make sure that you're always holding your needle on the eye. That way you never have to tie a knot here to keep your yarn. Starting on one side of your loom, I like to start on the bottom part down here without the tails. That way the tails kind of stay out of my way. Speaking of that, the tails on this loom are a little bit long. They really only need to be about 2 inches, so I'm going to trim this guy right here. And they have less of a chance of getting tangled up. Okay, so when we're weaving, you're going to start under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. I like to get my needle to go about halfway through and then pull it gently so that that yarn stays on the needle. Grab it by the eye and you're going to pull your yarn almost to the very end, just a little bit sticking out there. And then go ahead and finish it. Over, under, over, under, over, under. Pull it gently all the way through. Make sure your yarn is sitting tight down here towards the bottom of your loom. And because this is a pocket, we have to weave both sides of this project. So you're going to flip it and weave at the bottom here, same way you did on the front. Under, over, under, over, under, over, always rotating. Get about halfway through. Pull your thread or your yarn gently, holding the eye of the needle. I want to be careful that this little white piece of yarn stays right there on the edge. Okay, and finish that out. Over, under, over, under, over, under. Now, when I flip my loom over again, I need to be sure that when I begin weaving, I go opposite of what I did on this row. So if I started under on the first row, now I want to go over, under, always rotating that between rows of yarn. In the end, your weft strings and your warp strings should kind of have a checker appearance. If they appear like you can see stripes of warp strings, you've got to back up, start over. Gently pulling this through, flip, go to the row above the first row. I started under, now I go over, under, over, under, over, under. Getting started is the trickiest part, but once you get through these first few rows, it gets much easier. You don't want to ever use yarn that's too long whenever you're starting these colors. Even if you want more of that color, I'm going to show you how to go ahead and add more. But too long of yarn will set you up for tangles. Okay, let me show you what one looks like whenever you're a little further along. So if yours is looking like this, I ran out of yarn, I'm leaving about 1 inch hanging out here, you're in good shape. Now, if you forgot to rotate between rows, yours may look like this one. If you can see these warped lines instead of that checker appearance, then you need to back up. You want it to look like the pink one. So this is wrong. If it looks like this, take the yarn out, start over. It's okay to have to start over. Now, if I wanted to add more of this pink color or even introduce a new color, this is how you'll do it. I got some light blue here. I'm going to take my needle, thread my yarn, pull it about 6 inches away from the eye of the needle, hold on to the needle on the eye, and see where this ends. I want to back my needle up about an inch. And you're going to start an inch away from the end of this yarn, pretending that this yarn is the same line as this pink. So even though I went over here, I'm going to go over again and then under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Just finish out that line with that pattern. Bring that new color slowly until you get towards the end. Once I get towards the end, I'm going to pull it about an inch away from the end of the pink. So pink ended here, blue starts here. Pull it down. Okay, now flip it. And I can begin weaving business as usual. Looks like I was under for this bottom row here, so next I'm going to go over, under, over, under, over, under. And then finish that up. This is how you'll introduce more yarn or a new color. If you wish to use 2 colors at a time, you'll do that the exact same way I'm showing you here. Just put 2 colors of yarn through the eye of the needle. Make sure those yarn lengths are the same. And you're weaving just like you learned, but with 2 colors instead of 1. I like that because it looks nice and it makes your yarn thicker so you weave faster. Gently pulling this through. Always tucking that yarn down as tight as it'll go. If you let it weave loosely and your weft strings are loose and you can see the cardboard in between them, when you take your pocket off of the loom, you're going to see holes in your pocket. So if you don't want any holes, make sure you're always pushing that down, filling in those gaps. Take your time and do it right the first time so that you're happy with your end result. I was over, now I'm going under. Okay, so let's say I spent a few days on my weaving project, a few classes, and I'm done. Let me move this out of the way. Here's one I finished.